Well, hello, Bravites, and welcome to another edition of Movie Reviews with yours truly, Toya. Today I'm going to be reviewing You People, and I loved this movie. I want to start out saying that I just love the concept and the idea of it. We had a lot of great talent in this movie, starting out with Eddie Murphy, who's a classic, iconic, like all the things, right? We had Nia Long, who we have loved since the 90s. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who we've loved since the 80s, starting with Seinfeld. Maybe even she had worked before, I don't know. Jonah Hill is looking great these days. We remember him from Superbad, Knocked Up, and he's really made a lot of drastic changes in his life, but he's looking wonderful. Lauren London, of course, girl crush, right? She's beautiful, and great to see her getting back into her craft and doing work that means something. I was really happy to see this movie come forth because it had a lot of discussion points. I'll start there. But I just want to jump right in talking about the movie so far. So, of course, we know it's about interracial dating. The movie started out, it had some points in it where I felt like maybe the dialogue was a little too long. There were points that were not necessary. So Jonah Hill in the movie, his boss, they had this back and forth about how awkward he was, how to address his boss. It really was trying to flesh out the fact that he wasn't really built for corporate America, even though maybe his parents and family and everybody else wanted him to be in corporate America. But his real passion was doing a podcast with his best friend who was Black. She was gay. All the things were visited here. And they had a podcast about Black culture, and that's where he really shined. He was very comfortable in his skin, talking about Black culture and everything that was affiliated with it. One thing I liked about the movie, though, before I jump into that, is that it was shot, it reminded me of the direction of Insecure. And we know Insecure, classic show, cult classic, something that's going to go down as one of our top all favorites of all time. It's up there with Living Single. It rose to the top. It stayed there, even though the last few seasons may have been a little bit sketchy. But we love Insecure, and this movie was filmed like Insecure to me, except for maybe the transition points between scenes. Those were a little bit different. But going back into the film, there were just a couple points where the dialogue was a little too long, maybe a little bit unnecessary. Maybe a little bit unbelievable. So when Jonah Hill first jumped into into Lauren London's car, that's how they met. He thought that she was his Uber driver. Now, one thing about that is it ended up being mistaken identity. The girl on the Uber driver photo looks just like Lauren London, which was hilarious. I think they should have made her pull up looking for him, but he was driving off with Lauren London. They never did that part. It just showed him get into the car. She's trying to fight him out and, kind of acted like a Black Karen in that moment. So that was funny to me because she felt like she was being attacked, didn't know who this white man was jumping in her car. But he ended up, just telling her, I will show you around. You seem like you're lost. I'll show you where to go. You can get me where I'm going and we can go from there. And so they started to build this connection. They went out to eat. And first things first, outside of she's beautiful, he's handsome, the looks weren't really visited as much as their connection was, which I think was something that we should probably talk about a little bit more in depth, because nowadays everything is about how you look, how you're built, body types, all this stuff. Social media, thank you so much for that. But when they got together and they went out to lunch, they talked and they talked and they talked and they shut the restaurant down talking. They went out exploring each other's interests, talking. Their styles, they complemented each other's style. They matched each other's fly, if you will. And it just developed into something that they found refreshing, and they found love therein. Now, would Lauren London typically go for a Jonah Jonah Hill type, maybe not in real life, but we know opposites attract all the time. You never know what could happen. That's why it's good to stay open, which is why I love this movie, because we all have an idea of what love should look like, who we should find love in, all those things. But if you open your mind, broaden your horizons a little bit, you might find something developing that's beautiful that you never intended on. And that's what I liked about this movie. Especially with it being interracial in this time, you would think this was the 50s, the way that race relations are these days, with things being so tense and racism rearing its ugly head every chance it gets. Is disgusting. But here in this movie, we saw a love develop that it still rubs people the wrong way, which is kind of funny, being that we should have progressed so far in this day and time. But one thing about that is that I did not feel the chemistry as strongly as I probably would have liked. It felt as awkward maybe for the actors as it did for the viewers. So they did get close. They had some time in the bed, but you never really saw them intensely making out. You never really saw like a lot of passion and the touching and the feeling. And one of my love languages is physical touch. So if you don't engage me in a certain way, and it does not mean intimately like that. You know what I mean? It means like the way you stroke someone's hair, the way you caress their cheek, little things like that mean there's something more behind the relationship. You never really saw those things between them as much as I would have liked to see it. It's probably not the same for everybody because everybody's love language is different. But for me, I did not feel the chemistry as I did with Nina and Darius on Love Jones or something like that. That classic love that you felt through the screen that transcended time and all that. You didn't really feel that. But outside of that, you saw two people fighting for their love. And that's one thing that people use as a deterrent nowadays when it comes to interracial dating. It's like, oh, you're going to have to fight through what people have to say, how people feel about your relationship, yada, yada, yada. But there are so many dynamics in relationships where people's family don't receive the person for a number of reasons. And so this is just another one of those avenues where you kind of have to fight to prove your love, sometimes to one another, and just assume the best. And so that's the thing too. We don't always assume the best about other people. We think that there's malicious intent. We think that they meant to hurt us, when most of the time that's not even the case. And so here you saw Lauren London getting taken aback when Jonah Hill engaged her parents, and the same with him. She's like, oh, your mother was racist. She made me very uncomfortable. First of all, let me go back. I did not mention David Duchovny. David Duchovny played Jonah Hill's dad. And I must say that he's aged gracefully to me. He looked good and he was hilarious in the movie. There were some points where he just was allowed to interject his own humor, and you could tell that it was something that probably wasn't scripted, but it was so funny. He played We're Just Ordinary People on the piano when Jonah Hill went away to talk to Julie Louis-Dreyfus, who played his mother. And so Lauryn Hill stuck in there with his sister and his dad decides, I'm going to play some John Legend just to maybe make her feel comfortable, And so he starts playing it and he's like, we're just ordinary people. We don't know which way to go. And he's turning his head. That was so funny to me. I laughed out loud, but I'm a cornball too. But that was so funny to me. Now, this is the thing about that scene. And even about the way they addressed Lauren London when she first came to the house at all. People get very complimentary when it's somebody of the opposite race, over complimenting, trying to find ways to relate. And it's like, why are we so far apart that we cannot even understand how to relate and speak to one another regularly? We always have to find some way to say, I like this white actor. I like this white band. I like this black actress or actor. I think that your hair's fabulous. Why do we have to do that? We can't just be regular. And it's because we still are so separated and so divided in so many ways that we can't even find common ground enough to have a decent conversation. So that was a conversation piece I took away from the film, is that we still really don't even know how to relate to one another. And that's a shame. And it's pretty sad. Another thing about the movie is that Eddie Murphy was super militant Black. He brought out how there are so many Black people who are fair complected, who have curly hair. People don't really have natural, like, Black kinks anymore in their hair these days. Everybody's trying to look like they've melted into the melting pot, or like they are trying to assimilate. Everybody's trying to be like everybody else. Nobody's being innately themselves. And honestly, that is true. If you go to Africa, you'd be hard pressed in some countries in Africa to find lotion or skin hydrating products that do not have a bleaching agent in them. But that's not just in Africa. Even here, we're gluing hair in, we're taping hair in, we're sewing hair in, we're using products to make our hair look a little more curly. We're not really expressing ourselves in a way that Black people did back in the day, that when they felt like that was the crux of their pride, was in being Black. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but it was definitely something to bring up. And it was funny that Eddie Murphy brought it up in the movie, because there were so many people that were fair-skinned or that just didn't look like a brown Black person with nappy hair. I don't know what you want to take away from that, but I thought that was an important conversation piece to have as well. If I had somebody else here with me, we would probably discuss that and do some pros and cons, play off of it a little bit. But you can leave your comments and let me know what you think about that piece of it all. Also, there was one point in the movie where the two families came together. So Julia Louis-Dreyfus tried to be overwhelmingly doting on Lauren London, tried to be, I got this Black daughter-in-law and I'm going to stick up for her and I'm going to be, almost played into that white savior role, where you had Eddie Murphy and Nia Long, who were super militant, super pro-Black, Muslim, all the things, right? So they were the complete antithesis of one another. I think I used that word right. Don't quote me. And so they came together for dinner and they sat down, and there was just all this tension to work through and to scrape through and to scratch through. So it's like they're trying to find a way to talk to one another without bringing up race, without being angry, without feeling away, without feeling slighted, without assuming the worst about the other side, right? And so you have Eddie Murphy and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who got into this intense racial conversation about, what it means to be a bootstrapper for real. Did you really pull it up out the mud, or did your daddy's daddy put you on and you just claim that you had to get it like everybody else and struggle, when really you had a leg up, And that happens so many times in our culture, where we see that, the white people have they have a leg up in so many different areas. And they're like, no, I went to school, I worked hard to get here. And it's like, yeah, but you already had an in, or I had to fight to even be seen to be here. And so that conversation came up. The love of self, all of those things came up in that conversation over dinner, which was so important to have that conversation. And you found yourself feeling like you were on both sides of the aisle cheering during a political debate, right? Because you're looking like, oh yeah, I know that's right. And okay, yeah, she does have a point there, but it didn't end there. There was like an engagement dinner where, things kept coming to a head, and Jonah Hill ended up addressing Eddie Murphy and saying, you never would have liked me. You never did like me. You never did give me a chance. You always tried to catch me up and prove that I wasn't good enough for your daughter, all these things. So he had a very important conversation with him that fleshed out the whole matter, that made you look at it as through his lens and say, you know what, he really didn't give him a fair shake. No matter what he did or said, you weren't really going to receive him, because you were already dead set on not having a white son-in-law from jump. Same thing with, not the same thing. So it was different with Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Lauren London. But she did stop her and say, you're always trying to act like you're very complimentary of me and saying these things about how you really like me and all of this, but you're really just trying to find a way to relate to a Black woman because you have no idea how to do that. And she kind of told her, you need to stop doing that. I don't need that. You don't need to do that. It's very frustrating. It's very irritating for me. And so Julia Louis-Dreyfus seemed taken aback, and she's like, looked like she was going to get teary-eyed. And Lauren London's like, oh, now you're the victim. Oh, now you're going to cry. Oh, you're going to be the one who's hurt because I told you how I feel and I'm aggressive and an angry Black woman. And so there were so many important dynamics that were addressed in the movie, which is what I was looking for. I'm like, don't make it like it's this big happy-go-lucky thing that will go over smoothly. Like, call it what it is. Make it real. And that's what they did. As my friend LaToya would say, keep it funky with me. And that's what they did. They got into the nitty-gritty of it all. And it ultimately drove the couple apart. Okay, spoiler alert, it drove the couple apart. But they realized after some time that their children really were good together and they did bring out the best in one another. And so they orchestrated a meeting where they came together and were able to put them back together and surprise them with the wedding. The wedding ended with them in the Jewish, well, not traditional Jewish garb, but they had them on the chairs and, you know, they were picking them up and they had the veil and all of these things. And they came together and they, you know, the love was manifested into a marriage and it ended beautifully in that way. It felt like it was probably a little bit rushed, but you got the gist, right? We knew what needed to happen. We knew what most of us probably wanted to happen. Maybe not in this film, because like I said, people are opposed to interracial relationships still in this day and time. But traditionally in movies, when a couple breaks up and you've seen them build their love and you've seen them go through so much together, ups and downs and in and out and all of that, you ultimately want to see them back together. And so they did come back together. It ended with a nice, pretty bow on it. And, you know, their love was put out there with their family's full support. We don't always get that. There's not even always full support at the wedding. Sometimes a parent doesn't come. Sometimes family just isn't on board. They're just there to support you, not the marriage, all these things. So I'll say that for me, I appreciated that they put a pretty bow on it. I didn't need to feel all the real things because, you know, movies, TV, they're an escape from reality, right? So we should walk away feeling a little good about what we just experienced and feeling like it could be possible in this world, even if it is not, right? Every day. But what does that say? Like, are you know, does this movie make you feel like you would want to fight through all of that to prove your love to someone who really does care about you, who really does love you? But would you want to go through all those things just to prove that to yourself, to them, to their families? I'm not really sure. But overall, for me, this movie, being that I did not really feel the chemistry, being that there were shots that I felt like could have been taken out, but the boss that, you know, Jonah Hill's boss, he's an iconic actor as well. He's very funny usually. And so I can see them wanting him in the movie, but it just felt like the bottom was falling out a little bit. So considering that, and just a few other little minuscule factors, I will say that I would give it, out of 5 spotlights, which I usually do, I will give this movie three spotlights. I did enjoy the movie. I laughed. I did not cry, but I did feel real tension. I did feel necessary conversations happening. I did see a lot of things that I love. I love love. And so for anybody's love to come together, even if it doesn't look like my idea of love, I like that for you. So this came together in a way that worked. Overall, I do want to say that if you have not watched it, it's worth a watch. It's worth a discussion. And we might even come back and do an actual discussion with maybe a panel or a special guest. But let me know what you think about the movie. Let me know what you think about the review overall. And I'm happy to dialogue with you, even if in the comment section, and we can go from there. But again, this has been a review with yours truly, Toya. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Y'all stay tuned. I got more stuff coming anyway. It's 2023, about to get it on with more restaurants and food and things to do. So stay tuned, y'all. All right.
Brought to you by Chicago Bravo.